My name is Renee Sutton. I am 30 years old. I bought my first house when I was 24. A small Cape Cod in Maple Shade, New Jersey. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. A backyard with a maple tree that turned gold every October. It cost $189,000, and it was the proudest moment of my life. My parents co-signed because I was 24, with a limited credit history, and the bank required additional security on the loan. My mother and father sat beside me at the closing table and signed their names next to mine, and my father squeezed my shoulder and said, "Welcome to homeownership, Renee." For 6 years, I made every mortgage payment on time, every single one. 72 consecutive payments. Not one late, not one missed, not one short. I set up automatic payments from my checking account on the first of every month. $1,147. Rain or shine, healthy or sick, employed or between jobs. That payment went out like clockwork because my house was the one thing in my life that was entirely mine, and I refused to let anything threaten it. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March 2024, my phone rang, a number I did not recognize, a 215 area code. Philadelphia. Miss Sutton, this is Karen Walsh from First Liberty Bank's Collections Department. I am calling regarding your home equity line of credit account. You are currently 93 days past due on payments totaling $8,412. We need to discuss repayment options to avoid further action against the property. I sat at my kitchen table in the house I had worked 6 years to keep. The house where I had painted every room myself. The house where I had learned to fix a leaky faucet from a YouTube video at midnight. The house that was mine. I do not have a home equity line of credit. Silence on the other end. Miss Sutton, our records show a home equity line of credit was opened on your property on April 14, 2022. The credit limit is $218,000. The current outstanding balance is $211,600, and you are 93 days delinquent. I did not open a home equity line of credit. I have never applied for one. I do not know what you are talking about. Another pause. Longer this time. The application is in your name, Miss Sutton. It has your social security number, your date of birth, and your signature. Are you saying you did not sign this application? I am saying I have never seen that application. I have never signed anything related to a home equity line of credit. Someone forged my signature. I will need to transfer you to our fraud department. Please hold. I held for 11 minutes. In those 11 minutes, I pulled up my property records on the Burlington County Clerk's website, and there it was, a lien on my property I had never seen before. First, Liberty Bank, home equity line of credit, filed April 22, 2022, $218,000, borrowed against my house, without my knowledge, without my consent, and I knew. Before the fraud department picked up, before I pulled the application, before I saw the signature that was mine but not mine. I knew because only 2 people in the world had the access, the information, and the audacity to walk into a bank and borrow $218,000 against my property. My parents, Glenn and Marcia Sutton. Let me tell you about the family that forged my name on a mortgage document. Because the fraud is not where this story begins. The fraud is where 24 years of a very specific family dynamic finally crossed the line from unfair to criminal. Burlington, New Jersey, a small city on the Delaware River, 14 miles northeast of Philadelphia, the kind of place where the houses are modest and the people work hard and nobody pretends to be anything they are not. The Sutton family lived at 11 Willow Court, a 2-story colonial with aluminum siding and a driveway that cracked every winter. My father, Glenn, was an electrician. Union. Local 400. He made $71,000 a year with overtime. Good money for Burlington. Enough to cover the mortgage, 2 cars, and the general machinery of a 4-person household. My mother, Marcia, worked part-time at a real estate office doing administrative work. She made $22,000 a year. She kept the books at home, paid the bills, filed the taxes, managed every piece of paper that entered or exited the Sutton household, with the quiet authority of someone who believed that controlling the finances was the same as controlling the family. They had 2 children, my brother Derek, born in 1991, 3 years older than me, and me, Renee, born in 1994. Derek was the son, the firstborn. the one who was going to carry the Sutton name forward. That was the unspoken understanding in our house. Not because Derek was exceptional, he was average in every measurable way. Average student, average athlete, average ambition, but he was the son. And in the Sutton family, the son received things and the daughter earned them. This was never said aloud. It was demonstrated, daily, through 1,000 small decisions that accumulated over years like water wearing grooves into stone. Derek wanted a car at 16. He got one. A used Mustang my father found at an auction, $3,800. When I turned 16, I asked about a car. My mother said, "We cannot afford 2 car payments, Renee. You can ride with Derek." Derek did not want to go to college. He wanted to be an entrepreneur. My parents supported this completely. They gave him $7,000 from their savings when he was 20 to start a landscaping company that lasted 8 months. I wanted to go to college. My parents said there was no money for tuition. I went to Burlington County College for 2 years, transferred to Rowan University, and worked full-time at a restaurant through both programs. I graduated with a degree in business administration and $26,000 in student loan debt. Derek's landscaping company failed. He started a pressure washing business. It failed. He opened an eBay resale operation from my parents' basement. It failed. Every failure was met with more money, more encouragement, more second chances from parents who seemed to have an unlimited supply of faith in their son and a carefully rationed supply for their daughter. But I built something, quietly, without their help, without their money, without their belief. At 22, I got a job as an office manager at a construction company in Mount Laurel. Salary $38,000. I saved aggressively. Packed my lunch every day. Drove a 12-year-old Civic. Put every spare dollar into a savings account that I checked every Sunday night like a farmer checking rainfall. At 24, I had enough for a down payment. $32,000. 2 years of discipline compressed into a cashier's check that I handed to a title agent on a Friday afternoon in April 2018. My parents co-signed because the bank required it. My credit score was good, but my credit history was thin. 2 years of credit card payments and a car loan were not enough for the underwriter. My parents' names on the mortgage gave the bank the additional security it needed. I was grateful, genuinely grateful. They had signed a document that helped me buy my first home. I thought it was an act of love. It was an act of access. For 4 years, everything was fine. I made my payments, I maintained my house, I painted the bedrooms, I replaced the kitchen faucet. I planted tomatoes in the backyard that grew so tall the neighbor joked I should sell them at the farmer's market. I was promoted at the construction company, office manager to project coordinator. Salary $44,000, then senior coordinator, $49,000, then operations assistant. I refinanced the mortgage in 2021 to get a lower interest rate. My parents were removed from the loan because my credit history was now strong enough to qualify on my own. The refinance reduced my monthly payment from $1,147 to $982. I remember feeling free when those refinance documents were signed. The house was truly mine now. No co-signers, no family names on the loan, just Renee Sutton on the mortgage and Renee Sutton on the deed. But my parents' names had been on the original mortgage for 3 years. And during that time, they had access to information that would become a weapon. My social security number. They had provided it during the co-signing process. They had copies of the original application that included every piece of my personal financial information, my property information. They knew the address, the lot number, the assessed value, the mortgage balance, and the amount of equity I had built. My signature. They had seen me sign the original closing documents. They had watched my hand move across the page. They had studied the way I wrote my name. All the tools they needed to forge a loan application in my name were sitting in a filing cabinet in my mother's home office. The same filing cabinet where she kept the family's financial records. The same cabinet she had controlled for 30 years. In April 2022, while I was at work, while I was living my life, while I was making mortgage payments on time and planting tomatoes and painting bedrooms, my parents walked into First Liberty Bank and applied for a home equity line of credit on my property. They brought my social security number. They brought the property information. They brought an application with my name printed at the top and my signature forged at the bottom. The credit limit was $218,000, based on the appraised value of my home, minus the remaining mortgage balance. My equity, built over 4 years of on-time payments, stolen in one afternoon. The bank approved the application. They did not call me to verify. They did not require me to appear in person. They accepted the paper application with the forged signature because it looked legitimate, and because the property information checked out, and because nobody at that bank imagined that a person's parents would forge their child's name on a mortgage document. The credit line was dispersed in 3 draws over the following 6 months. $82,000 in May 2022, $71,000 in August, $65,000 in November, $218,000 total. Every dollar went to Derek, his latest venture, a restaurant, an Italian place in Pennsauken called Sutton's Table, because even the restaurant bore the family name. Even the restaurant was a monument to the son who received everything, and the daughter who funded it without knowing. Sutton's Table opened in September 2022, with a $218,000 investment stolen from my home equity. It had exposed brick walls and Edison bulb lighting, and a menu that Derek designed himself, despite having no culinary training. It closed 11 months later. August 2023. Bankrupt. Every dollar gone. Every piece of equipment sold at auction. Every dream funded by my stolen equity dissolved into nothing. And then the payments stopped, because there was no more money. Derek had nothing. The restaurant was gone. And the home equity line of credit, $211,600 with accumulated interest, started going delinquent. 93 days later, the bank called me. First Liberty Bank's fraud department was thorough. I will give them that. Within 72 hours of my initial call, they had pulled the original application, compared the signature to samples from my mortgage file, and reached a preliminary conclusion. Miss Sutton, the signature on the HELOC application does not appear to match the signatures on your original mortgage documents. We are escalating this to our internal investigations unit, and we recommend you file a police report. I filed the report at the Burlington Township Police Department on March 15, 2024. Officer Darlene Mack took my statement. She was professional, sympathetic, and clearly uncomfortable when I told her who I suspected. You believe your parents did this. They are the only people who had access to my personal information. They co-signed my original mortgage. They had my social security number. They knew the property details. And my father's handwriting looks very similar to the forged signature. She wrote everything down. Case number 24-0315, identity theft, forgery, mortgage fraud. That same afternoon, I called an attorney, a woman named Lisa Pennington who specialized in real estate fraud. Her office was in Cherry Hill. She had prosecuted and defended mortgage fraud cases for 16 years. I sat across from her desk and laid out everything: the HELOC application, the property records, the disbursement trail, the failed restaurant. Lisa reviewed the documents for an hour. When she finished, she looked at me with the expression of someone who has seen fraud many times, but is still capable of being angered by its cruelty. Renee, mortgage fraud is a federal crime under 18 U.S.C., Section 1014. It carries a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison and a fine of up to $1 million per count. She held up the HELOC application. This is one count. The forged signature is a second count under the federal forgery statute. If your parents submitted false information to obtain the credit line, that is a third count for bank fraud. She set down the document. And if they used the proceeds to fund a business without disclosing the source of the funds, there may be additional charges related to money laundering or wire fraud depending on how the disbursements were processed. I stared at her. How many years are we talking about? For 3 to 4 counts of federal financial crimes? If convicted on all charges, your parents could face 15 to 30 years each. 15 to 30 years for borrowing against their daughter's house to fund their son's restaurant. I did not want my parents to go to prison for 30 years. But I did not want to owe $211,000 on a loan I never took out either. Lisa outlined my options. File a civil lawsuit to have the HELOC declared void due to fraud. Cooperate with the police investigation, which could lead to criminal charges. Report the fraud to the FBI since mortgage fraud crosses the federal jurisdiction threshold. I chose all 3, but first I needed to do something harder than any of those legal actions. I needed to confront my parents. I drove to Willow Court on a Saturday afternoon, March 23rd. My parents were home. Both cars in the driveway. The house looked the same as it always did. Aluminum siding, cracked driveway. the rhododendron my mother had planted when I was 12, still blooming purple by the front steps. I walked in without knocking. They were in the kitchen, my father at the table reading the newspaper, my mother at the counter making coffee. A Saturday afternoon like any other Saturday afternoon in the Sutton household. Except that I was holding a folder containing the forged HELOC application, the disbursement records, and a copy of the police report. I set the folder on the kitchen table. "What is this?" My father looked up from his newspaper. The same casual question he asked whenever something appeared in front of him that he did not want to deal with. "It is a home equity line of credit application for $218,000, taken out against my house, in my name, with a forged signature that looks a lot like Mom's handwriting." The kitchen went quiet. The coffee maker gurgled. Outside, a dog barked in a neighbor's yard. My mother turned from the counter. Her face cycled through 3 expressions in rapid succession: surprise, calculation, and then something that settled into defiant resignation, the face of someone who had been caught and was already preparing their defense. My father closed the newspaper, folded it carefully, set it aside. The deliberate movements of a man buying time. "Renee, we can explain." "Then explain." I sat down across from him. "Explain how you walked into a bank and forged my signature on a loan application. Explain how you borrowed $218,000 against my house without telling me. Explain how every dollar went to Derek's restaurant that failed in 11 months. My mother sat down, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. A shield, a prop, something to hold on to, while the floor opened beneath her. "Derek needed help," she said. Her voice was tight, controlled. The voice she used when she was negotiating at the real estate office. Not the voice of a mother talking to her daughter. The voice of a woman making a deal. He had the opportunity of a lifetime. The restaurant space was perfect. The location was ideal. He just needed capital. "So you stole mine." "We did not steal anything." My father's voice hardened. "We borrowed against equity that we helped you build. We co-signed that mortgage. Without us, you never would have gotten that house. You co-signed. You did not co-own. Your names came off the loan when I refinanced in 21. You had no legal right to borrow against my property. It is just equity, Renee. You were not using it anyway. It was sitting there, doing nothing. It was sitting there, protecting my home. That equity is the difference between owning my house and losing it. And now I owe $211,000 on a loan I never took out, because you gave my money to Derek for a restaurant that lasted 11 months. My father leaned forward, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. "Derek is your brother. Family helps family. When he succeeds, we all succeed. He did not succeed. He failed. Again. With my money. Again." My mother set down her mug. "We will pay it back. We will figure something out. There is no need to involve anyone else." I opened the folder. I slid the police report across the table. I already involved someone else. "This is a copy of the police report I filed on March 15th. The bank has confirmed the signature on the application is forged, and my attorney has informed me that mortgage fraud is a federal crime carrying up to 30 years in prison." My mother's face went white. My father stared at the police report. The newspaper he had folded so carefully was forgotten. The coffee my mother had been making was forgotten. Everything was forgotten, except the piece of paper on the table that said their daughter had reported them to the police. "You called the police," my father said, "on your own parents. You forged my signature and stole $218,000. What did you expect me to do?" He had no answer, because there was no answer. There was no version of the story where what they did was acceptable. No amount of family loyalty or parental sacrifice or sibling obligation could transform mortgage fraud into a reasonable financial decision. I stood. "My attorney will be in contact. I would strongly suggest you retain your own legal counsel." I walked out of the kitchen, past the rhododendron, past the cracked driveway, past the house where I had grown up believing that family meant something more than a resource to be exploited. I got in my car. I drove home, to my house, the one with the maple tree and the painted bedrooms, and $211,000 of debt I never asked for hanging over it like a storm cloud. Lisa Pennington moved quickly. The civil lawsuit was filed on April 1st, 2024. Burlington County Superior Court. Sutton v. Sutton. Case number Burr L. 274324. The complaint alleged mortgage fraud, forgery, identity theft, and unjust enrichment. It demanded that the HELOC be declared void due to fraud, that full liability be transferred to Glenn and Marcia Sutton, and that damages be awarded for the financial harm caused by the fraudulent loan. Lisa also filed a complaint with the FBI's Philadelphia field office. Mortgage fraud involving a federally insured financial institution triggered federal jurisdiction. First Liberty Bank was FDIC insured. That meant what my parents did was not just a state crime, it was a federal crime. The FBI assigned the case to Special Agent Thomas Reyes from the Financial Crimes Unit. He called me on April 8th. Miss Sutton, I have reviewed the complaint filed by your attorney and the referral from First Liberty Bank's fraud department. I would like to schedule a meeting to discuss the case. We met at the FBI's field office on Arch Street in Philadelphia. The same gray building with the same security checkpoints that every white-collar criminal eventually visits. Agent Reyes was in his mid-40s. Calm, methodical, the kind of agent who did not raise his voice because the evidence spoke louder than any human ever could. He walked me through the timeline. April 14, 2022. HELOC application submitted to First Liberty Bank. Applicant listed as Renee Marie Sutton. Property address matching your residence in Maple Shade. Application signed with a signature that does not match your known signatures. May 3rd. First disbursement, $82,000. Wire transferred to an account at TD Bank belonging to Derek Sutton. Memo line reads, Restaurant Investment, August 15th. Second disbursement, $71,000. Same destination, same memo. November 9th. Third disbursement, $65,000. Same destination, same memo. He looked at me. Total disbursed, $218,000. All of it wired directly to your brother's business account. None of it. First Liberty's forensic document examiner has compared the signature on the HELOC application with signatures from your original mortgage file. His conclusion is that the HELOC signature was not produced by you. Agent Reyes set down his pen. Miss Sutton, we are opening a formal investigation. This will involve interviews with your parents, your brother, and bank personnel. We will also be issuing subpoenas for financial records related to the disbursements and the restaurant business. He paused. I need to be direct with you. If the investigation confirms what the evidence already suggests, your parents will be charged with federal mortgage fraud, forgery, and potentially wire fraud. The combined maximum sentences are significant. Are you prepared for that? I was sitting in an FBI office in Philadelphia. My house had $211,000 of fraudulent debt attached to it. My parents had forged my name. My brother had spent my money on a restaurant that lasted less than a year, and my father had told me it was just equity. I am prepared, I said. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Agent Reyes subpoenaed bank records from both First Liberty and TD Bank. The wire transfer records confirmed that every dollar of the HELOC disbursements went directly to Derek's business account. He also subpoenaed security footage from the First Liberty branch where the application was submitted. The footage from April 14, 2022 showed two people entering the bank at 10:47 in the morning. Glenn Sutton and Marcia Sutton, my parents, walking into the bank together, submitting an application with my forged signature, walking out 34 minutes later with approval for $218,000 of my equity. The footage was time-stamped. The faces were clear. The evidence was undeniable. Agent Reyes also interviewed the bank officer who processed the application, a man named David Lynn, who had worked at First Liberty for 8 years. David confirmed that the applicants had presented identification and property documentation. He had not required the named borrower to appear in person because the cosigners from the original mortgage vouched for the borrower's identity. My parents had used their status as former cosigners to bypass the in-person verification requirement. They had leveraged the trust the bank placed in them as my parents to commit fraud against their own daughter. The bank was furious, not just at my parents, at themselves. The compliance failure that allowed a HELOC to be approved without the borrower present was a violation of their own internal policies. First Liberty's legal department contacted Lisa Pennington and offered a settlement before the civil case even reached discovery. The bank would void the HELOC entirely, remove the lien from my property, absorb the outstanding balance, and pay me $45,000 in damages for the failure to verify my identity. Lisa accepted on my behalf. My house was free, the fraudulent debt was gone, The lien was removed, but the criminal case was just beginning. The FBI executed search warrants on June 4, 2024. 2 locations: my parents' home on Willow Court in Burlington, and Derek's apartment in Pennsauken where he had been living since the restaurant closed. I was not there for either search. Agent Reyes called me afterward. We recovered financial records from your parents' home, including copies of the HELOC application, property documents from your original mortgage closing, and a notebook in your mother's handwriting containing practice signatures. Practice signatures? My mother had practiced forging my name before walking into the bank. She had sat at her kitchen table with a pen and a piece of paper and rehearsed writing her daughter's name over and over until it looked convincing enough to fool a bank officer. The notebook contained 17 attempts. Agent Reyes described them to me. The first few were rough, obvious imitations, but by the 10th and 11th attempt, the signature was close. By the 15th, it was nearly identical. The 17th was the one she used on the application. 17 attempts to learn how to steal from your own daughter. At Derek's apartment, they recovered bank statements from his TD Bank business account. The account that received all 3 wire transfers, $218,000 deposited between May and November 2022. $218,000 spent by August 2023. The spending breakdown was a monument to bad decisions. Restaurant build-out costs, $91,000. Equipment and furniture, $43,000. Staff salaries for 11 months, $37,000. Food and beverage inventory, $22,000. Marketing and branding, $12,000. And the remaining $13,000 on what the bank statements described as miscellaneous, which Agent Reyes translated as personal spending that Derek categorized as business expenses. The restaurant had never turned a profit. Not a single month. Revenue averaged $11,000 per month against operating costs of $19,000. Derek had been losing $8,000 a month from the day he opened until the day he closed. 11 months of bleeding money that was never his to spend. Derek was interviewed by Agent Reyes on June 7th. According to the agent's notes, Derek was cooperative but claimed ignorance. He stated that his parents told him the money came from a family investment account. He said he did not ask questions because his parents handled the finances and he trusted them. Trusted them. The same word I had used for 24 years. The same word that had cost me $218,000. Agent Reyes asked Derek one specific question. Did you know the money came from a loan against your sister's property? Derek's answer was no. I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. Derek was many things: irresponsible, entitled, chronically unable to sustain a business, but I did not think he would have knowingly accepted money stolen from my house. Then again, I did not think my parents would forge my signature either. Trust has a shelf life in the Sutton family, and mine had expired. The grand jury was convened on July 15, 2024. Federal Grand Jury, District of New Jersey. The forged application, the practice signature notebook, the bank security footage, the wire transfer records, the forensic handwriting analysis that First Liberty's examiner had completed confirming the signature was not mine. The grand jury returned indictments on July 22nd. Glenn Raymond Sutton, 2 counts of mortgage fraud, 1 count of forgery, 1 count of wire fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Marcia Ellen Sutton, 2 counts of mortgage fraud, 1 count of forgery, 1 count of wire fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Maximum combined sentences, 60 years each. They would not get 60 years. Nobody gets the maximum on financial crimes unless they are running a billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. But the indictments communicated something specific. The federal government considered what my parents did to be serious. Multiple counts, multiple statutes, multiple years of potential incarceration. My parents surrendered on July 25th at the federal courthouse in Camden, processed, fingerprinted, photographed, released on bail with conditions. Surrender of passports, no contact with the victim, regular check-ins with pretrial services. No contact with the victim. That was me, their daughter, the person they were now legally prohibited from calling, visiting, or approaching. My mother tried to call me that evening. Twice. Both calls were automatically blocked by the no-contact order that her own bail conditions imposed. The second time she tried, she left a voicemail on my old landline number that she apparently still had memorized. Renee, please, we need to talk about this as a family. Your father is not well. The stress is affecting his heart. Please call us back. We love you." I did not call back. Love does not forge signatures. Love does not steal equity. Love does not practice your daughter's handwriting in a notebook 17 times before walking into a bank to commit a federal crime. The plea hearing was scheduled for October 7, 2024, United States District Court for the District of New Jersey. Judge Robert Flanagan presiding. Courtroom 6. My parents' attorney, a federal defense lawyer named William Garrett, whom they had retained by mortgaging their own house, had spent 3 months negotiating a plea deal with the assistant United States attorney handling the case, a woman named Sandra Torres, who prosecuted financial crimes with the focused intensity of someone who took fraud personally. The deal was as follows. Glenn and Marcia Sutton would each plead guilty to 1 count of mortgage fraud and 1 count of forgery. The wire fraud and conspiracy charges would be dropped. The prosecution would recommend probation with full restitution. Full restitution, $218,000, plus the bank's investigation costs of $14,000, plus the FBI's investigation costs of $7,000. Total restitution, $239,000. The bank had already voided the HELOC and absorbed the balance, so the restitution was not about repaying the loan. It was about accountability, a formal acknowledgement written into a federal court record that Glenn and Marcia Sutton had stolen $218,000 from their daughter and were legally obligated to pay it back. Sandra Torres called me before the hearing. "Miss Sutton, the plea agreement requires your input as the victim. Are you satisfied with the terms?" I had one condition, the same condition I always had. I want a victim impact statement read in open court. I want my parents to hear what they did from my perspective, not from a lawyer, not from a judge, from me. Sandra agreed. October 7th, 9:30 in the morning. I arrived at the courthouse with Lisa Pennington. She was there as my civil attorney, but also as my friend, a role she had assumed gradually over the past 7 months as she watched me navigate the destruction of every family relationship I had. My parents arrived with William Garrett. My father looked old. Not aged, old. The distinction matters. Aging is natural. What I saw on his face was the accelerated decay of a man who had been caught. His suit hung loosely, his hands trembled. His eyes were fixed on a point somewhere beyond the courtroom walls, as if he were looking for an exit that did not exist. My mother was composed, controlled. The same mask she had worn my entire life, the face of a woman who managed appearances the way other people managed money. Carefully, strategically, with the understanding that what people saw mattered more than what was true. Derek was not there. He had not been charged. The prosecutors had determined that while he benefited from the fraud, there was insufficient evidence to prove he knew the source of the funds. He was a beneficiary, not a conspirator. I disagreed with that assessment, but I accepted it. Judge Flanagan reviewed the plea agreements. He addressed each parent individually. "Mr. Sutton, you are pleading guilty to 1 count of mortgage fraud and 1 count of forgery. Do you understand these charges?" "Yes, Your Honor." My father's voice was barely audible. "Mrs. Sutton, same charges. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." My mother's voice was steady, controlled. Even now, the judge accepted the pleas. Then he turned to me. "Miss Sutton, you have prepared a victim impact statement. You may read it now." I stood. I walked to the podium. I looked at my parents sitting at the defense table. My father would not meet my eyes. My mother met them and held them, defiant even in defeat. I read my statement. 4 pages, every word chosen the way my mother chose her signatures, carefully, deliberately, with full knowledge of their weight. When I was 24 years old, I bought my first house. It was the proudest day of my life. My parents co-signed the mortgage, and my father squeezed my shoulder and said, "Welcome to homeownership." 2 years later, they walked into a bank, forged my signature, and borrowed $218,000 against that house to fund my brother's restaurant. I paused. They did not ask me. They did not tell me. They practiced my signature in a notebook until they could replicate it well enough to fool a bank officer. Then they walked out with access to my equity, my security, and they gave it to someone who spent it in 11 months. I looked at my father. "When I confronted you, you said it was just equity, as if my home were a piggy bank you could break open whenever Derek needed cash. As if the 6 years of mortgage payments I never missed were just numbers on a statement. As if my name on a forged document was nothing more than a formality." I looked at my mother. "You practiced my signature 17 times. I have seen the notebook. 17 attempts to learn how to write your daughter's name well enough to steal from her. That notebook tells me everything I need to know about what I mean to this family. I am not a daughter. I am a resource, a credit score, an equity line, a name to be forged when the son needs money. The courtroom was silent. Judge Flanagan was listening with his hands folded. The court reporter's fingers moved without sound. I finished. I do not hate my parents. Hate would require me to care about their opinion of me, and I have stopped caring. What I feel is clarity. The clarity of finally understanding that the family I grew up in was never designed to protect me. It was designed to use me. And the moment I stopped being useful on their terms and started being valuable on my own, they found a way to extract that value without my consent. I set down the statement. Judge Flanagan was quiet for a long moment. Then he delivered the sentence. Glenn Sutton, 4 years supervised probation, 300 hours of community service. Full restitution of $239,000. Marcia Sutton, 4 years supervised probation, 250 hours of community service. Full restitution jointly with Glenn Sutton. Permanent federal felony record. The gavel came down. The restitution payments began in December. $2,000 per month. Structured over 10 years. My parents' combined income after my father's union suspended him pending review was barely enough to cover their own mortgage plus the restitution. They sold the house on Willow Court in February 2025, the house where I grew up, the house with the cracked driveway and the rhododendron and the aluminum siding that rattled in winter storms. It sold for $217,000. After the remaining mortgage and selling costs, my parents netted $83,000. $60,000 went directly to the restitution balance. The remaining $23,000 funded their move into a 2-bedroom apartment in Burlington. My mother got a full-time job at a shipping warehouse. My father found work as an independent electrical contractor, doing small residential jobs for cash while his union membership was under review. The family fallout radiated outward the way these things always do. My father's sister, Aunt Lorraine, called me in January, not to support me, to scold me. You put your own parents through the federal court system, Renee. Over money, your grandmother would be ashamed. My grandmother would be ashamed that her son forged her granddaughter's name on a mortgage document. That is what she would be ashamed of. Lorraine hung up. 2 cousins on my mother's side stopped speaking to me. An uncle I barely knew sent a letter calling me cold and vindictive. The letter was 3 paragraphs long and did not contain a single acknowledgement that my parents had committed a crime. But other responses surprised me. My father's union representative, a man named Carl Brewster who had known my father for 20 years, called me privately. Renee, I know this is hard, but between us, your father talked about this at the hall. Before everything came out, he mentioned helping Derek with a loan. The way he described it, I knew something was not right. I should have said something. Why did you not? Because it is not my business to get between a man and his family. His voice carried guilt. But maybe it should have been. My neighbor, Mrs. DeLuca, a 70-year-old widow who had watched me paint my house and plant my garden for 6 years, brought me a casserole the week after the sentencing. She did not ask questions. She just said, "You are a good girl, Renee. You deserve better than what they gave you." Derek contacted me in March. A text message, the first communication since the investigation began. Renee, I have been thinking about everything for months. I do not know what to say that does not sound like an excuse. But I want you to know that I did not know the money came from your house. Mom and Dad told me it was from an investment account. I believed them because I always believed them. A pause. That does not make it okay. I spent your money. Whether I knew where it came from or not, the result is the same. You lost something because of me. Again. Another pause. I am working at a warehouse now. $16 an hour. I am going to start sending you money. Not because a court told me to, because I owe you. And for the first time in my life, I want to pay my own debts. He sent $400 the following month. And the month after that, and the month after that. Not large amounts, not enough to fix anything, but consistent, reliable. The first reliable thing Derek Sutton had ever done. I did not respond to his texts for 3 months. When I finally did, I wrote 1 line. Keep going. 2 words. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Permission to continue trying. That was all I had. It has been a year since I found the HELOC documents in my property records. I am 30 years old. I live in the same Cape Cod and maple shade, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, the maple tree in the backyard that turns gold every October. The lien is gone, the fraudulent loan is voided. My mortgage is mine and mine alone. No cosigners, no secret credit lines, no family members with access to my equity or my signature, or my future. I check my property records every month now. I check my credit report every quarter. I have a security freeze on my social security number. I have fraud alerts on every financial account I own. I do these things not because I am paranoid, but because I learned the hardest way possible that the people closest to you have the most access to your life and the most power to destroy it. My parents and I do not speak. The no contact order expired when probation began, but neither of us has reached out. The silence between us is not hostile. It is structural, like a bridge that has been condemned. You can see the other side. You can remember walking across it. But you know that if you step on it now, it will collapse beneath you. My mother sent a letter in April, through Lisa Pennington, because she was still uncertain about the legal boundaries of contact. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten. Her real handwriting this time, not mine. She wrote about the day I was born, about holding me in the hospital and feeling a love she described as terrifying because it was so complete. She wrote about watching me grow up and knowing that I was the strong one, the responsible one, the one who would be fine no matter what. She wrote, I told myself you did not need the help that Derek needed, that you were capable and he was not, that giving him everything and giving you nothing was not favoritism but triage. I was saving the one who could not save himself. Then she wrote the sentence that mattered. But triage is for emergencies. And this was not an emergency. This was a choice. I chose Derek every time. And the 17th time I practiced your signature in that notebook, I was not saving him. I was stealing from you. And I knew it. I read the letter twice. Then I put it in a drawer. Not in the trash, not in a frame. In a drawer. Where I can find it if I ever need to remember that my mother is capable of honesty. And where I can close it when the honesty is too heavy to hold. Derek keeps sending $400 a month. He got promoted at the warehouse. Assistant shift supervisor. $18 an hour now. He texted me a photo of his first paycheck with the new title. No words, just the photo. I sent back a thumbs up emoji. Small gestures from 2 siblings learning to communicate without the scaffolding of parents who made communication impossible. My father has not written, has not called, has not sent a message through anyone. The silence from him is the loudest thing in my life. Because his silence is not confusion or shame or the inability to find words. His silence is disagreement. He still believes he was right. He still believes that equity is just equity, and daughters are just resources, and sons are just investments that have not paid off yet. Some people never change. You cannot wait for them. You can only change the locks and check the records and make sure your name on the documents is the only name that matters. If you are still listening, let me leave you with this. I was 24 when I bought my house. I stood in the doorway on moving day with a key in my hand, and I thought, this is mine. Nobody can take this from me. I was wrong. Someone could take it. Someone did take it. Not a stranger. Not a scammer in another country. My own parents. The people who signed beside me at the closing table. The people who knew my social security number because they had given it to me. The people who knew my signature because they had watched me learn to write. They used every advantage that family gives you, and they turned it into a weapon. And when I caught them, my father said it was just equity, and my mother said they would pay it back. And both of them looked at me like I was being unreasonable for wanting to keep what was mine. You are not unreasonable for protecting your home. You are not ungrateful for demanding accountability. You are not cold for reporting a crime just because the criminals share your last name. Your home is yours. Your equity is yours. Your signature is yours. And anyone who takes those things without asking, whether they are a stranger or a parent or a sibling, is a thief. The family discount does not apply to theft. It never did. Check your property records. Check your credit report. Check every document that carries your name. Do it today. Because the people who tell you not to worry are sometimes the ones building a second mortgage you do not know about. My house is still standing. My maple tree still turns gold in October, and my name on the deed is the only name that matters. Nobody else's. Not anymore. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, if it reminded you that your home deserves your vigilance, share it. Like. Subscribe. Leave a comment telling me what you would have done. Because everyone deserves to own their own front door, and nobody, not even family, has the right to open it without your permission.